computer. I think that's.
I got it.
All right, Dr. Bob, we're back. So our
Hey,
first official catch up.
so off you go, Ivan. What did you think of last time? What would you like this time?
I think it was fascinating last time, Dr. Bob. It's been such a pleasure to catch up with you, enlightening with what's been going on. And for me, this time around, what I would like is if you could start from the beginning of your modality and how it evolved. And similar to the Copenhagen, I think, which you did a presentation, I think for this first one, that recording would be awesome. And then after that, subsequent ones, we can start asking you different questions and, things that are on our minds. So,
Excellent. Very good. Next, let's have Belinda.
I found last week fascinating. Thanks so much, Dr. Bob. It was really amazing. I didn't want it to end. And I have lots of questions moving forward. I'll keep that until we get into the questions. But yeah, just amazing. Thank you.
Brilliant. Hey, I'm enjoying this already. And Natasha?
Morning, everyone. Morning, Dr. Bob. Had a great time last week. It was very stimulating for me, actually. It stimulated my thoughts and feelings, really. I became quite emotional about the system and about how we help people and how we bring big change in to a big system, and more than one system, really, isn't it? There's many systems in the mental health field. So it was very stimulating for me as far as just getting some cogs moving around what's the best way of moving things forward in this kind of area. What I'd love to hear is really what your principles are in working with people. And at some point, and I guess doing an overview of that today would be great. And then really being able to deep dive into some of those and some of the evidence, I guess, you've seen, and some background on some of the reasons why those principles, you see those working and moving forward in the change, really, how we do that in change.
Magic. Okay, Rebecca?
Hi, everyone. Yes, I loved last week. I particularly found it really fascinating what you're talking about, that idea that people aren't broken, that, people can be having mental health problems, but everything is fixable.
That's
So
it.
that was,
That's
yeah.
the key. That's the key. Curable.
Yeah.
Curable. Use the
Yeah,
word
yeah,
cure.
curable. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I thought that was really important. And I think that gives people a lot of hope as well. So that,
Absolutely.
yeah, and I think that that's a different way of looking at things.
Yeah. I mean, human beings are astonishing, right? They're
Yeah.
resilient. They imagine things. They go through hell and they come out the other end. And so I say, oh, well, you're psychotic. Oh, well, you're depressed. Oh, well, crap. It's
Yeah.
inhumane. So if we can catch some of this optimism, get it out there regularly, because I mean, what you've already said, we get people who are coming back next week, see what else do they get up to, You don't get optimism in this area. You do not get clarity. The three things that I call it, clear, simple, and effective, applies only to this. The rest of the field of psychology is murky. The rest of the field of psychiatry is even worse. Psychoanalysis goes, but if you want something clear, simple, and effective, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And we
Yes.
don't stop till we get there. So before I go into the principles, I want to tell you what's happened to me in the last week, right? I've got I can't find it now. I've got 2 new videos, right? Which I came across through chance, in a sense. One of them is of a 4-year-old child, right? I haven't managed to clip. I want to clip the bits and then I'll put them up, but I haven't done that yet. 4-year-old child working out how to get a gadget in front of him to work. You put the blocks in the right way and the light comes on. Put it the wrong way and they don't. And he tries this, he tries that, and he goes, ugh. And the commentary says, this child has tried 5 hypotheses in 2 minutes. This child is 4 years old and is thinking faster than our best scientists. Incredible. So that's really, I'm going to clip that one. And the other one was Harlow's monkeys. I don't know if you're familiar with Harlow's monkeys. Harlow was a lab man in the States, and he brought up a whole series, as I understood it, a lot of the baby monkeys in his lab were dying. So he thought, well, I'll bring them up without parents. So he brought them up without parents. And one of his most famous experiments is he has sort of wire pseudo mother monkeys, right? And one of them is just a metal frame with a milk bottle. And the other is a metal frame covered in terry toweling. And he exposes these infant monkeys to different situations. And first of all, he counts how long these infant monkeys stay with the feeding monkeys, stimulus, and the terry towel. And it's the terry towel. Food is important, but comfort, security is 20 times more important. Right? That's what we're talking about. So basically, what goes wrong is the development. I mean, that's what I say in the podcast, basically, and that's basically what happens. You get what the first video I've mentioned shows is that the programming starts in great detail. The child is learning, does this work, does that work? And the fundamental thing the child is working is mum looking after me, is dad looking after me, is no one looking after me? And then you couple that with the security from the terry towel monkey, and you've got the whole thing in a nutshell. So what you've got to do is to say, okay, I'm not a parent, I'm an emotional plumber, okay? This problem you've got, you don't want to talk about it. Talk about what happened. Sorry, cut that out. Talk about what your feelings are about your parents. Sit your mum over there, sit your dad over there. What will you say to them? Oh, you're lovely, oh, whatever, right? But the size of the symptoms, the size of the problem indicates the damage. That's all. The size of the problem indicates the damage. If it's trivial and they can get by, fantastic. If it's serious, the damage was serious. The most serious chap that I dealt with, apart from the psychotic symptoms, was this serial killer called Alec. And when he was 4, his father threw his mother downstairs. His father, very violent, but that was the critical thing, right? So he's putting together in his head hypotheses. What's this world like? What matters out there? What happens out there? And what happens out there is you get these people who are 5 times your size killing the people who are going to look after you. They're robbing you of your security. So, and what this then does is to stop the thought, blocks the frontal lobes, blocks the speech center. So you sit Alec down, as I did, and said, tell me about your dad. Thump. It's gone. You can't. So you don't sit him down and say, tell me about your dad. You sit him down and say, how are you doing? What was your childhood like? Chat. Building up a relationship. What you're defeating is the first hypothesis. If I say I'll be here at 11 o'clock, I am here at 11 o'clock regardless. I break my leg, that's different. Otherwise, I'm here. Because what you're undoing is the irrational, unhelpful hypotheses. Because that's what the child does. The child learns a language, which is very complicated. It learns relationships, which are very complicated. Human beings are very complicated. But the child itself is very complicated. And the video which I've got, which I can show later if you wish, is of a 17-minute-old baby. So the baby is born, yowling, because it's now in a cold, uncomfortable cot. Put in his mother's arms, he settles immediately. 17 minutes later, he's put in his dad's arms, and his dad sticks his tongue out. The baby does the same. The baby is interacting socially within minutes of birth. That's where it all starts. So you like the Romanian orphan, you put them without any human contact, they learn the world's full of non-human contact. What else is there to learn? So your job is to say, just a minute, whatever you learned in the past, I'm going to be different. Oh yeah, I've heard that before. Yeah. Which is why trust is critical. I'll be here and you're here. I said I'll post the books off. I posted the books off. They're in some sort of airliner across the Pacific.
Thank you. Thank you.
So that's that. Any questions arising from that?
Yes, Dr. Bob, I have one in regards to Alec, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was Alec witnessed his father throwing his mother down the stairs. Is that correct? Okay, so my question is this. Did he see his mother as his main survival support system, and then did he see that as life-threatening towards himself, and did he have an anger towards his father? So how did do you believe that sort of transformed him into wanting to kill later in life, or becoming psychotic?
No. The child is growing up and knows immediately, like I say, within 17 minutes or before, that these people, these enormous creatures, are vital to his survival. They are his life support system. He knows that. And it's bonding, it's attachment theory, it's all these things. But everybody knows that. The child bonds not only to mum, but also to dad, hopefully, I mean, in the normal situation. Right? So in Alec's case, his father was violent to Alec and violent to his mum. So Alec is learning about the world up to the age of 4, obviously. It's been ongoing all the time. In fact, he may have even started in the womb when he's listening through the abdominal wall. There's a lot of evidence about that too. So I wouldn't be too particular about the questions you've asked, right? It's blurred in his mind. Mm-hmm. He's frightened of his father.
Yes.
The fear turns into rage, anger, because underneath every anger there's a fear. Fear is the master emotion. Fear is the most important emotion. If you can pull the fear out, all the other emotions fall into place. So the fear is there. He's frightened of his father hitting him, killing him, basically, because the child doesn't know when he's going to stop. And he's also frightened of his father killing his mother, because if both of them disappear, he disappears, and he knows that. And not only does he know it, he knows it 100% or 200%. I mean, that's what the child does. The child says, "I'm surviving by being looked after. My parental relations are my life support system." He doesn't verbalize that, but that's what the emotions are telling him. And the other thing I would say is that in infancy, the emotions are maximum. They may reduce with age, but they're maximum. And emotions are life support system. The emotions say, "Just a minute, do something." That's what the emotions are for. The emotions are to preserve your life. That's what they're for. So I'm not too interested in, I'm not even particularly interested in, I was going to say, why Alec selected men. He did, and I think a number of murderers do that. There's a famous serial killer in England called Harold Shipman, and he killed old ladies. Now, if I'd sat down with Harold, I'd have said, "Just a minute, what happened to mum?" Because the child is growing up, establishes these hypotheses, these figments of what the world is like and what's happening out there, and one of them goes wrong. Right, so this one has done me bad, so I'm going to get back at them. Either in Alex's case, it's going to be men, and he was a very clever man, and he rationalized it, and he's put in a schedule, and he said, right, every 2 years I'll kill a man. And my first interview, and there's dialogue in my book there about that. He says, well, part of me wants to kill, and as long as it does, I will let it. So you say, well, where's your conscience? Where's your feelings for humanity? Non-existent. There isn't one. In fact, later, when he started talking, he said, I want to grow a conscience. I says, well, maybe you do. I'm not interested. That's not my game. My game is for you to think. My game is for you to lift the frontal lobes. And once they do, they find that they can work things out. And they love it. And they start to talk. I mean, Alex once he clocked on what was going on, he was very articulate. I say he was an intelligent man. And he said, well, when he was 18, he was 24 when I first saw him. When he was 18, he got married, he had everything he wanted, but he could only talk with his fists. Now that's incredible. And you get people who can only talk with their stomach ulcers, their migraine, they can only talk with their depression, they can only talk with their voices or whatever it's going to be. They're just symptoms. And the only significance for symptoms for me is the severity. What's the level? What do they stop you doing? And the more severe they are, the more severe the trauma was. But you can't go through the front door. You have to say, look, I'm going to be here for you. Take your time. I'm interested in unpacking this. And, careful with this one, there's a guaranteed cure if you finish the course. How about that? It's a guaranteed cure if you finish the course, because the human mind functions like your legs function. When legs functioning, you can run around, you can skip, you can jump about. Nobody says, well, you've got leg disease, you're born without. No, you can do it. And that's the same with the mind. The mind makes up hypotheses. The mind plans ahead. The mind says, well, if I do that, I can do this. And if she does that, or then you can work it out. That's what it's for. And the point that this, I can't find it now, of course. Sorry, here it is. My new friend, Alison Gopnik, says that the longer the childhood, and this is in other species as well, the bigger the brain. And humans have got the biggest brain relative to size, and they have the longest childhood. And what goes into the childhood comes out of the childhood. And it's your job to put it right. Bump.
So, if I may, I have two more follow-up questions, and then I'll leave it to the girls. Do we know why the fear changes to rage?
I'm not interested.
And I was wondering if you were going to say that. You're not interested?
Right.
Yep.
Emotions, right? And this is where science has gone wrong, right? And so scientific psychiatry has gone wrong. You can measure things in science, and in fact, you have to measure things. That's what science does. It measures things. Oh, look, this is getting bigger, this is getting smaller, right? Emotions are subjective. They're going on in here. So one of my breakthroughs was, I'm not going to tell you the difference between guilt, shame, fear, put them on a spectrum. Put them on a grade. One end you have negative emotions, one end you have positive emotions. Everybody knows that joy and delight is positive. Everybody knows that fear and terror and rage and stuff is negative. But fear or terror, which is bad fear, is the master one. If you pull out the fear, all the others fall into place.
Wow.
And the reason it's the fear is that life-threatening fear from earlier trauma stops you thinking. Now we're Homo sapiens, and if we're not thinking, we're Homo irrational or whatever. It doesn't make any sense. But the key is, remove the fear, and they start thinking again, whoever they are. And the remedy, the antidote for fear is trust. The antidote for fear is trust. And so if a normal person or a normal doctor goes into a prison that's full of murderers, diddly diddly, you're not going to trust them unless you've got something you're looking for. And you say, now then, inside all these people, they've done dreadful things. I do not condone anything they've done. Inside, there's a sociable, non-violent, lovable person. And you tell them, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. And you have to persuade them. So that when you say it, they trust you. Because initially they don't. Nobody's ever said that to them. Nobody's ever asked their permission. Nobody's ever asked their consent. They've taught them they're garbage, and they believe they're garbage. And they're not. And so who are you to tell them? Well, you just have to do what you can do. But if you persevere, and this is my message really, is that, as I say, Homo sapiens is a delight. Whatever they've done because they aren't thinking straight. If they think straight, then they're friendly, they're sociable, they're non-violent. And if they're not thinking straight, anything can happen. Just look at a couple of politicians for that. I mean, it's unbelievable.
So, Dr. Bob, one other part that I'm curious about is you mentioned that Alex said while a part of him wants to kill, he'll let it. So how do you interpret that part? Because there's other sort of modalities that talk about parts negotiation, parts integration, and just him saying a part of me. Where do you go with that? How does that fit in with your model, or do you just dismiss it and just what are your thoughts on that?
I think what you're talking about is the mind, okay? These are things that are going on in the mind, right? Now, the mind is the most complex, elusive, impossible to define thing in the entire cosmos. There isn't anything more complicated. And the essential part of the mind is it's fluid. You can say, I think I'll go to the moon. We've gone to the moon. So Freud in particular said, well, we'll have it in 3 parts. We'll divide it up. We'll have the anatomy of them. No, the whole thing is fluid. It flows. So one day it may be rage, next may be anger, next may be annoyance. I'm not interested. What I want is the person in front of me to think. First of all, to be able to talk. First in front to say, yes, my dad was wonderful in some ways, but he frightened me. I mean, my dad actually did. He was wonderful in some ways, and he frightened me. Until I was 49, I was frightened of him. I wouldn't admit it. I remember having an argument with myself when in the early 70s. I'm not frightened of anything. I'm not frightened. Why are you saying that? And I thought, shut up. And if somebody come to me and said, well, you're frightened of your father, I thought, but by the time I was 49, 1986, because I was in it turned out to be ideal situation for me. It wasn't what I chose at all, but I wanted to be a psychiatrist. I did 4 years in psychiatrist, and then I got blocked from promotion because I refused to give shock treatment. And so the only medical career available to me at that time was general practice, family medicine. I didn't want to do it. Boring. I didn't know anything about tonsillitis or back pain or not intellectually challenging or anything. I went, I had 3 children to support and so on and so forth. And they, over 19 years, they said, you're all right. No. You're doing a good job. No, I'm not. My father's anxieties were in my head all the time. No. And I thought, just a minute. They can't make it up for 19 years. I'm saying that because I don't know quite when the change came over. What I know the difference was I allowed the person in front of me to be frightened of their father. Up to that point, they were allowed to be angry. I wrote a thesis on anger because I could admit I was angry with my parents, but I wrote a thesis on Freud's dealing with anger, which he didn't deal with very well at all, but not fear. I'm quite sure all the recordings that I've done over the 60 years it is, people have said, yes, well, and there's some fear. I said, no, we don't talk about fear. No, I'm sure I'd have stopped them. But when I had this 40-year-old woman, they call her the axe lady, she said, I can't blame my father. Now, I knew her father had been dead 4 years. So this wasn't logic. I thought, just a minute. She's frightened of somebody who's dead. I said, why are you frightened? Oh, I couldn't blame him. So then, eventually, because I wore her down, in a sense, and earned her trust. A, I wasn't exploiting her. B, I wasn't getting money either way, and she wasn't costing, and so on and so forth. And she must have said, this man isn't going away. So then she said, after 9 months, weekly sessions, she said, did I ever tell you the time that my father took, my mother took me upstairs, took with my brother and sisters to the bedroom, shut the bedroom door, pushed the furniture up against the door. My father came up the stairs and cut holes in the door with a hatchet. He said, I'll bloody kill you all. I said, no, you didn't. And that is the key. She was unable to think or say the worst thing that ever happened to her. And that is where everybody goes wrong, including Freud. Because in medicine, you say, yes, so you've broken your leg. Did you fall down? I did not fall down. I did not. Right? And they did. They denied the worst thing that's happened to them. So medically, you can't make any sense of it. So as I say in the podcast, the well-meaning doctors go on and on and on and on and on, and they get nowhere. They keep going through the front door, the front door, the front door, the front door. You have to go through a side door. You say, well, I'm just a storage chap. There's just two people in the room here. We're discussing what happened to you a long time ago. It's not happening now. It's happening now in their minds, but not in yours. And it's a question, how long does it take you to persuade them to trust you? You know that they're no longer 4, 3, 2, whatever it was. You know that. They don't. That's the key. So eventually, what you find is that I got in the way of giving them homework, right? And the patter was, as I've got this person at the moment, I'm 53, not 6. She said that to herself. And the fear and the stuff goes down. Because she's getting the frontal lobes are ticking, the frontal lobes are working, and she's working it through. So that's really what goes there. So when Alec says to me, part of me wants to kill, as long as he wants to, I will let it. I'm not interested in which part. Alec is a whole organism. He's holistic. His intent, his planning ahead, his survival skills are killing people. Doesn't make any sense. And when it doesn't make any sense, he stops doing it. It continues to make sense because his frontal lobes are blocked. And on the frontal lobes blockage, this investigator, Bessel van der Kolk, did brain scan work in 1995, put the brain scan on the person, played them an audio tape, music tape, everything's fine. Play them a tape of the car crash or the gunshot, and the frontal lobes stop working. The speech center stops working. It's as if they've had a stroke. So I took this literally and called it verbal physiotherapy. It's exactly the same. You go to a physiotherapist and you say, I can't move my arm. I'll never be able to move my look. It won't do what I want. It won't do what. And the therapist says, that's all right. Just relax. Just relax. I'm going to persuade you with your consent. You have to trust me. I know what I'm doing. I've done this many times before. And what people do slowly. Good Lord, it's another ½ inch. And then you do it. And it's exactly the same with the mental problems. You say, oh, no, I can't think about that. I can't think about it. Just try creeping up on it. Just try third party. I think that people who are 82 shouldn't be frightened of their mothers. You know, something indirect. You have to negotiate. You have to see what they will buy, what they will swallow, what will go down. It's the same with any other educative process. If you say, right, Here's a differential calculus, get on with it. No, you go through the steps and then they can do it. This is algebra. We put this here. Well, I don't know. How does it work? This is how it works. Which bit don't you understand? This is how it works. And it works and it carries on. Next. I'm enjoying this, tell you.
Same.
Can I ask a question if that's okay? Dr. Bob, I'm really curious about what
You have to tell me your name because I'm very bad at names.
Oh, that's okay, Belinda.
Hello, Belinda. What's your
Yeah.
question?
I'm just wanting to ask, how does medication, the psychiatric medication, affect the frontal lobe? You know how they put people on medication. What does it do? Can you explain a little bit more about that?
What the medication does is increase the doctor's income.
Yeah.
In 1980, and as I say, there's a paper in the book about this. The American Psychiatric Association said, all the money is going to the talk therapists. We'll reinvent psychiatry in terms of brain disease, chemical imbalance. So, and about, well, just before then, so 10 years or so before then, chlorpromazine had come on the scene and people found that it calmed people down. They called it, initially it was called a major tranquilizer because it tranquilizes people. So the DSM-3 authors, rascals, decided to extrapolate this to everything. And it's ludicrous. It's not even sensible medically. They've had to break 4 of the 5 major rules of medical practice. Now, I had a patient on the Isle of Wight who suffered psychotic symptoms. So I prescribed for her diazepam and chlorpromazine. I gave her 30 tablets of each. I said, take these when your stress levels are so high, have a duvet day, a weekend off, whatever it is, take these. Do not regard them as curative. Do not take them regularly. Do not become addicted to them, which is what we've been talking about before. And you do now. Like alcohol, they turn it off. They turn off your frontal lobes. And you probably find that every single psychoactive drug does something similar, turns off the frontal lobes, calms things down. Alcohol is the classic, and they all work along the same lines as alcohol. And I'm not knocking alcohol. Alcohol, everybody knows it's dangerous, it's toxic, but it calms you down. And if you can't find a better way of calming down, then you're in trouble. And that's exactly the same with the medication. The medication has an effect. The medication can become addictive, particularly apparently benzos and antidepressants can become addictive because you rely on a chemical solution instead of a social solution. The mind is the organ of socializing. And if your socializing isn't going well, is it parental figments are getting in the way, or do you need to have a different social network? And that's what therapists are there to do. They're verbal physiotherapists. They say, well, your mind actually is very useful. It's just a bit paralyzed at the moment because of the fear, which is a long time ago. I happen to know that the fear stopped. The abuse stopped. You don't know that, but I do. As I say, that's if you want to be cheeky, you say, well, there's a guaranteed cure if you finish the course. And finishing the course means having childhood influences, whatever they are, go into the past. So go back to a point that I've made. I don't mind what happened to Alec, whether his father did throw his mother downstairs or didn't, or anything. I'm not interested at all. What I'm interested in is Alec's reaction to negative. Something dreadful has happened to Alec. I don't want to know the details. I want Alec to know that it's stopped. So if I go in to say, well, was it a 10-foot drop or a 20-foot drop? Boring, wrong. I'm not interested. My message is, whatever happened, it's not happening. And my breakthrough was that because the frontal lobes have gone off, It's happening all the time, every minute inside the head. And so you can see how strong the therapeutic bond has to be, because what you're doing is pulling them back from the cliff edge. If they do it themselves, they're going to fall to their destruction, and you have to assure them that you're there to stop them falling to destruction. You don't believe they're going to be destroyed. They do. So medication works by slowing everything up. It gums everything up, like alcohol. If you think of medication as alcohol, fine. And you can see in a way how it happened. I mean, when I first started in psychiatry, antidepressants, so-called, came on the market, right? So you get this person and everything seems to be going right, everything's fantastic, and they're depressed. So you say, why are you depressed? Well, I just feel awful. Oh. They cannot tell you why they're depressed. So you think, well, there isn't a cause. Because you can't find it, isn't one. So therefore, we'll find a chemical. There's this half meaning in there. But it's garbage. It's garbage. Because there is a cause, they can't tell you. When they can, the cause evaporates. The cause is obsolete. It's having an effect today, but it should have stopped having an effect a long time ago.
And do you feel from the work that you've done that obviously the people that you dealt with were on these type of medications? If the medication causes the frontal lobe to close down and you're communicating through talk, through what you do, and it opens it back up, but then the medication just shuts it down, like how do you get past the contradiction, if that makes sense?
Oh, it does, yeah, it certainly does. And you get by it with consent, okay? If you take my star pupil, Lenny, right, 43. I arrived in the prison on July the 1st, 1991. And I went through the 17 people on that particular unit and wrote down all their medications. And so Lenny comes in and I say to him, well, no, Lenny, I see you're on these injections. He's on tranquilizing injections every fortnight. What do you think about stopping? Oh, don't stop them. Oh, no, I stopped them in February and my temper went off the wall, right? I said, that's fine, Lenny. I shall continue prescribing until you say so. Then, because I unpacked, or we were able to unpack his fear of his mother, and he could think clearly about her. So in the November video, I say, your mother's coming across to batter you. What are you going to say? I just hold her hand. So he's solving the trauma of his mother battering him to death by telling her she can't do it and believing that she can't do it. And that's been a battle. Unfortunately for me, he was the least damaged in the whole unit. He changed within 5 months. And some of them still hadn't changed after 2 years. So if they'd all been like the latter lot, I'd have thought, well, psychopath, what can you do? No. Lenny, you can see him. You can see him waking up. And the first 11 minutes, which have got on my Substack, he's actually, you can see in that, he says, right, I will, all right, I will. You're here, all right. I'm encouraging him to tell his mother he's an adult. I'm not encouraging him to tell his mother any dishonesty or deceit or anything. You're an adult, Lenny. He doesn't believe it.
What happened, Doctor? Sorry to interrupt, Dr. Bob. What happened to his medication after you spoke with him and he unpacked everything? Zero? No more medication?
Yeah.
Wow.
He doesn't need it.
How long had he been on medication for? Do you know that?
A decade?
Wow.
Drug him up. That'll stop them hitting each other. Drug him up. And I mean, of course it works. It's like getting him drunk all the time. It's not long term. It's not healthy. And it's not reputable. And that's what's happening to the psychiatric population now. This BMJ letter says that 1 in 5 people are on antidepressants. So they're all suffering toxic chemical side effects for emotional problems, for earlier trauma, which they can't think about. So the medication doesn't help. Medication hinders. And the simple way to look at it is alcohol. Okay, take G&T 3 times a day. What? That's what they're saying. I gave a lecture, this is about 10 years ago, to a group of doctors in North Wales. One of the doctors there had been to one of my conferences, said, you come and talk. So I came and talk, and I said, you're prescribing G&T 3 times a day, and they didn't ask me back. They didn't ask me back. But that's the way to look at it. And the point is, understand it. Clarity. Clear, simple, and effective. The simplicity is, I'm not going into the mental furniture. I'm not interested in what the mind. How old are you? Well, I'm 82. So why are you still worried about when you were 2? Well, it's always been there. Well, you can change it. And that's what you need to do. Tricky. Very
Thank
good.
you. Thanks.
Pleasure. That's Belinda. Next.
Natasha, I have a question.
Natasha.
All right. So when you first started talking about Alec,
Yep.
you said the first thing is about building the relationship. And I'm thinking inherent in that is building the trust.
Yep.
And you said that the purpose of that is to defeat the first hypothesis. And I just want to clarify what that first hypothesis is. I'm imagining it that it's you can't trust people, the world is dangerous, those kind of things. But I just wanted to check with you that's kind of the first hypothesis that you're thinking.
I think that's absolutely right. I mean, if you look at the fairy tale world, you have a lovely dad, you have a lovely mum, and they bring you up, and parents has got 2 jobs: bring the child up to be independent. So they then go off and have a whole series of grandchildren, and everything's lovely, right? So what the child is doing, learning what the world is like. They learn not to run across busy roads. They learn to communicate verbally, not just with their fists or anything. And the hypothesis that Alec learned was that people in positions of authority are dangerous. The stronger you are, the more dangerous you are. And I mean, this is throughout the trauma story. If you're weak, the abuser will eat you for breakfast. No problem. You've gone. If you're strong, you'll repeat the abuse. Unless you've established a trust. You have to be strong. You have to be confident. This is what so much goes wrong, say, with CBT or all these therapists. They go in there and say, oh, listen to the patient. Listen. No, the patient needs educating. You don't go in and say, well, how do you think you learn to swim? How do you like to swim? How do you like to... You say, this is how you swim. You want to learn to swim? This is what you have to do. You don't say, how do you like to do algebra? You say, this is how algebra is done. If you don't learn it, that's fine. But this is, so you do it by consent. You say, well, this is what I'm about. I'm about looking from the past. In fact, I start by saying, I'm interested in fear and anger from the past. Have you got any? I'm actually only interested in fear, but I put the anger in for added color, right? And so they say, well, or in fact, they can't talk about the fear anymore than I could when I was early on. So they talk about the anger. Yeah, well, he should never have been, he was drunk all the time, or whatever it is. I've got my eye on the time, 20 minutes to go. Hold on, Natasha. So who got left? We've only got Belinda.
Becca. I've got a question. It's about working with someone who hasn't had really all that childhood trauma. Just say they've had, basically a fairly good childhood, but then they have a really traumatic incident that occurs when they're an adult, and moving them on from that fear, whether it's been like an assault, a DV situation, whatever, but moving them on from, or even something traumatic that's happened, say bullying in the workplace, that can be quite traumatic as well. How do you move them on with that fear when there's also the added fear that it could happen to me again? So it's no longer saying, well, I'm no longer that child, I'm not 3, I'm an adult, I can do blah, blah, blah.
Well,
Mm.
dreadful things happen. You get nasty people out there doing nasty things to you and to other people. What does the adult do? The adult says, well, if you do that again, I shall take you to court and sue you for assault, or I shall complain to the management, whatever. There are ways of dealing. I call it the adult in the room. You appeal to the law, you appeal to the authorities to deal with that. That's today. Now, if you have reservations to that, if you think, well, I'm only small, they're not going to take notice of me. I mean, I can complain, but right? That goes back to childhood. So there may be a component in the trauma. I mean, the crucial thing is the trauma happens at work. It's finished. It's over. Has it gone? No. I'm still worrying it's going to happen. If it's still going on, that's reminiscent of what we're talking about. And these things are very, very subtle, or can be very nuanced. And the person to decide whether something should be done is the customer. Not you, the customer. The customer says, well, yes, it was a very bad assault, but I daren't go back again because you can't. So what does an adult do? A bad assault, so you take precautions, you have the law or the authorities or the personnel department or whoever it is. That's how it, I mean, bad things happen. Something you do what you can do. But if there's a niggle in the corner, that's what a therapist can help with. Now, whether they agree or whether they consent to do that, that's a different matter. But from a principle point of view, a philosophy point of view, if the trauma isn't happening now, and you've taken all reasonable steps to stop it happening again, and you're still worried about it, that's irrational worry. Now, when you get an irrational worry, which isn't reflected in the facts of the situation, you've got a little voice saying, you're only 3, they're not going to take any notice of you, right? And when you said they've had a lovely childhood, just be careful. Fine,
Yeah.
I'm glad it was lovely. Did he stand up to your dad? Well, no, he was a very, very, very dangerous man. See? Did you get the impression that you were in charge? Did they bring you up to look after yourself, like all parents should? Because not all parents do. And I didn't do too well. We'll go into that. But it's, what are your foundation stones? What have you got in your mental furniture? Have you got a situation? Well, actually, I'm an important person in my own right. I'm not the Pope. I'm not Prime Minister, but I'm important. And if people assault me at work, I need to do something about it. If the back of the mind is, no, you're only 3. All these people are much stronger than you. They know how to do it. You don't. That's what cripples you. There you are, 25, 45, 85, and these things are still going on. Sit down, get to know me, listen to what I'm saying, get a bond of trust, unpack. Look at some of these videos. See how Lemmy changed. See how these different people changed over the time. See if there isn't something there. And then sit your mum down over there, and what are you going to say? Well, after all, it wasn't quite as good as you told me it was, or something. I'll have to tell you this little story. This chap came in. He was illiterate, and I said, "Now then, Peter, you think you're rubbish, don't you?" "Oh yes, I'm rubbish." "I don't." "What?" He jumped up like he'd been stung, rushed out of my office, wouldn't come and see me again, because I'd contradicted his notion that he was rubbish. And the story about that is that I had an interview with the local radio station, and they were talking about my work. I was talking about work. I said, well, I had this chap come in, and I told him he wasn't rubbish, and he won't talk to me again. So next week, I'm in my office, and he puts his head round the door. "You were talking about me, weren't you?" Came and sat down. We started talking about it. He started doing literary classes again, right? His self-esteem went up. But you've got barriers, and you can blow it. I mean, I'd blown it by being too direct. I mean, what can you do? So, I mean, but so people, they're called human beings. They're a little bit on the odd side. But the reality is, and the only thing I'm interested in is what happened a long time ago has now stopped. But in his head all the time was, you're rubbish, Peter, you're rubbish, you're rubbish, you're rubbish. And I'm saying, you aren't rubbish. And that was frightening to him, because the context in which he first learned that was a frightening context. And I had to produce, and I hadn't done at that point, I needed to produce a non-frightening. Fear has to go. There has to be no fear in the situation. I have to be a reliable, trustworthy friend. Some knowledge in some areas and some ignorance in other areas. But I have to convince him that I've got some information in that area. Right. So it's time for a go round in the reverse. So Belinda, what did you think of that? And what would you like to see next time?
I could ask you a million questions and there's not enough time. I just thought it was really great. Every point that you touched on, take away something from it. So thank you so much. And I look forward to bringing my questions next week.
Excellent. Very good. Next, Nat, what do you think?
Oh, more food for thought.
That's what we need. Stir them up, stir them up.
And more questions, and particularly I think on what Rebecca raised about when people have adult trauma and like thinking about that. Oh, that's all right. I'll save it for next week. I realize we're out of time. I'm already like, I'm going to write it down. I'm going to write my questions down just on what Rebecca was talking about and some ideas. And I'd love your thoughts on some of the ideas that I've got around that.
I mean, I think that's it's a very good point, because adult trauma happens, right?
Yes.
Your best friend dies, or somebody attacks you, or cuts your leg off, or whatever it's going to be. Trauma happens, and the whole point about human beings is that they're sociable species. Social networks support. If you aren't able to access those social networks, or you say, like my friend Peter, it doesn't apply to me, then you're wrong. And you will suffer from trauma today more than you need to. I'm not saying it's not pain-free. Obviously, that's what trauma is. But we're a social species, and we deal with trauma by social support.
I think were there studies around sending people to war, and they were giving them some very addictive drugs to keep them going, cocaine, or I don't know, I'm not very good in the in the drug department, but there was something that was about making them more aggressive so they would perform in war, considered highly addictive. But when they came home, what happened was the people who had big and amazing support networks were not addicted. They just came home and started living their lives again. But the people who didn't have that became or remained addicted to the drug that they had been given and suffered greatly because they didn't have the support networks. And there was some studies or research done around that. And I thought that was really interesting, and it kind of supports what you're saying, I guess, around how important our social networks are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, I'm sure that's absolutely right. Next.
Rebecca?
Okay.
Yeah, found it fascinating again. And I will be thinking about things. I'm just trying to ensure that my questions are relevant. Because sometimes I get a question that comes up and I think, oh, okay, maybe that's kind of diverting from the point of how and what's really important about helping people. I had a question that came up before, just very briefly, and it was about some people have a lot of trauma in childhood, but why is it that some people, with all that fear and that anger, they really externalize it and they go and hurt other people, whereas other people tend to internalize it and like they're berating themselves, but then unnecessarily lashing out and hurting other people in the community. And I guess the people who come and work with me, like I'm not working with violent criminals. I'm working with, just general kind of population who might be more internalizing things. And I guess some of my questions are around that came up.
It's a lot to do with thresholds. Some people can tolerate a lot, some people can't tolerate very much. That's the first thing to say. And also, from listening to, I think, probably about 20,000 different childhoods, right?
Mm.
There's a small genetic component, very small. I don't pay much attention to that, but some event will have deflected them from punching people outwards or punching themselves inwards. And it's to do with my friend Peter again. You're a victim, you're rubbish, you're the one that's wrong, you're the one that's guilty. Maybe your parents have told them that, whatever it is. But that's the misunderstanding on their part. They think that they're the victim, so they can't do anything. They're people hit them, they don't hit other people. They're too small to I mean, they shouldn't hit anybody, but it's where the rage is coming. The rage should come out. Anger is to frighten the tiger off, right? You roar at the tiger so it doesn't eat you, fine. But if you're roaring at people who love you and are trying to help you, you're roaring at the wrong people. Ivan, what did you think of it, and what would you like to say? What did you?
Oh, my goodness, Dr. Bob, I've got like so many questions. Like,
Excellent.
okay, for starters, can we have another 2 hours? But
The answer to that question is no. I'm sorry.
yeah, I know. I'm just like, I won't go into my questions obviously now. I'll save them for when we got time. But I'm just excited that you have presented that there's another way of curing, and you're talking about curing, not just treating. That's what I'm excited about, and that, excuse me, that you've proved it. Even though I know there's going to be naysayers, and I know that there's going to be people questioning, how, what, when, all of those things. But when I hear your story and your sincerity and your passion and everything that you've, achieved, I have faith. And I guess that's the first step for me, is to have faith that there is another way. And why not experiment, explore, research? And I hope that this goes much, much further and grows. And I'm excited that instead of talking about treating people all the time, but that there is a way to actually cure people, because I think that's what people really want. They don't want a treatment. They want to be cured. And even that in itself, that context is like they're broken. We're not, and I don't know if you would word it like this, that we're not broken. It's just that there's been a glitch. And it's like when that blockage is cleared, that you're a normal functioning human being that's happy and going back to what you said, lovable, sociable, and anti-violent. I mean, and it's simple. What you're talking about, what I love, is that it's simple. I don't have to read a medical journal to go, I just got to, and we're just, I guess, for us, or for me, I'll speak for me, I'm just, through your examples, I'm learning the process of how to do that. And then doing it. And not talking about it, with academically for years, but actually, all right, let's go out there and practice this, and let's see the results.
It's a software bug, okay? You write a computer program and something's a glitch. It's a bug. So you work at it, you remove it, and the program works. That's what we're doing, and that's all we're doing. Now, the other thing is, I can't get any further the way I've gone. Okay, so in fact, some idiot, the very same idiot we mentioned before, said, well, there's Bob's claim to abolish violence in the prison. I want a randomized computer trial. So it's bonkers. What we've got to do is what you've said, get an army of therapists out there looking for a bug, one bug, negotiating the removal of the bug, negotiating, not blotting it out, not drugging it to pieces. And then people will say, just a minute, these people are getting good results. Why? Until you get there, you'll get skepticism. Until you get there, you're up against a whole medical inertia. We've never done that before. We're not going to start now. He's a maverick, very dangerous man. You know, you're sunk. And that's what I have allow myself a little bit of optimism with this group, right? Because you're not talking, I'm not talking, as you say, I'm not talking academic, I'm not talking scientific numbers, and there's this percentage of this and this percentage of that and this control. No, understand what's gone wrong, try it out. These people come with a whole slew of different symptoms. I'm not interested in what the symptoms are, I'm interested in the severity of them, and I'm interested in finding the bug which produced them. Turn the bug off, and then the symptoms evaporate. And it's cure. It's cure. I mean, Alec will never kill again. He is cured of homicidal feelings, plans. He will never kill again. Because he understands for the first time where he came from. Excellent. So if you want to email some of them in, that's fine. And we'll have a look at the video, but if you all agree to the video, I'll put it up on my web anyway, and we may start on a YouTube. But I need all your consents.
Love it.
See you next week.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Dr. Bob.
Thanks,
Oh,
Dr. Bob.
Thank you.
Really? Really? Oh, well, fair enough. See you later.
Bye.